We've been sold the lie that everybody can get rich. Today, I'm here to disprove that wrong philosophy, and with the knowledge of the problem comes the solution. If you're smart enough, it's not that difficult to discern. Let's go back to the beginning. An economy. What is an economy? Economy is derived from the Greek word economia. It means the study of lack. For an economy to thrive, someone has to be in lack. That's why I laugh inwardly when people come up with wrong propositions like everybody can be rich or we can all make it. As honest as that statement, it is equally untrue. Everybody being rich creates another kind of inflation. Take for instance, the janitor has $100,000 in the bank. It's most likely she wouldn't want to serve in that essential job, or even those who would give their services would require a much higher wage rate. Consequently, the company has to pass off that hike to the final consumers. Before we move on, it is important to note we cannot discuss the bankruptcy, or we cannot discuss the high circulation of finances without consulting the historical events that happened when Mansa Musa, on his journey on his pilgrimage to Mecca, he bankrupted the economy of Egypt. How? He handed out chunks of gold to servants and slaves, creating some kind of inflation. By now, you should understand that scarcity or value is linked to scarcity. Anything that is scarce becomes valuable in and of itself. See your life through this lens. The only reason you desire that beautiful lady is because beauty is scarce. Beauty is a commodity, and when a commodity exists, transaction takes place. The only reason gold is half as desirable is because it's scarce. So value is linked to scarcity. You see this in today's day and age, especially in Africa, where a few suppliers merge together in an attempt to hoard goods, creating artificial scarcity. Once those goods are released into the market, guess what happens? Exactly. Value is linked to scarcity. In a scenario or in a situation where every single person has thousands of dollars in their accounts, it becomes very difficult to solicit their time for menial jobs, menial but essential, menial but essential. If the floor of luxury stores were dirty, you wouldn't want to tread, you wouldn't want to shop in that kind of environment, correct? So when the janitor is requesting for price the amount, and every single person wants an increase in pay, you would have to pass that hike to the final consumer, creating another version of inflation. So that which we desire becomes the norm. So every single person has Gucci. Every single person is on the latest XYZ. In fact, this proves my philosophy, or it proves this philosophy. If the wealth of the nation was distributed equally, in a few years' time, it would filter back to the hands where it came from. You notice every poor person is on this endless quest, the endless pursuit of acquisition, buying things. Who owns Louis Vuitton? Exactly. Who owns all the luxury you dump your money into? And even if you try to invest, Let's say you and your peasant friends collude, get one property off the market. You just made property in that area expensive. Who owns most of the properties? The rich people. And some who genuinely needed that money to buy groceries or some essentials. Who owns the who owns a huge chunk of Walmart? The rich people. So there is no going around it. There is nowhere you can turn. You'll be gone either side. I'll share the solution to this philosophy later in the video. But the point I want to highlight is everybody can't be rich. It creates another inflation, another kind of inflation. Yeah, what used to be rich or what used to be luxury becomes the norm, forcing the companies to create another kind of product or service reserved for the top 1%. Unfortunately, that's how society operates. Society has a desire to stratify individuals. Society always has a desire for hierarchy. Hierarchy is always existent in the human species. There is no such thing as communism. In fact, if every single person was to devolve into communism, we are all working on farmlands. On a long enough time frame, what we call division of labor, which is someone plow the ground, this other faction store the grain, this other faction is responsible for planting, and in those various factions, it's most likely there will be an envoy. Each of them now has a representative which acts as a leader. It's only a matter of time before we revert back to democracy, because hierarchy is the bedrock of society. For anything worthy of admiration to function, there must be a hierarchy. For a country to be effective, a president has to be afloat. For a class to be effective, there has to be a class representative or class rep in most part of society. So hierarchy has always been in existence. For a home to function, the parent has to be at the helm of that ship. Hierarchy will always be in existence. No such thing as communism. So for most of you peasants who are desperately trying to bring back communism, foolishly believing it would solve your problem or it will somehow erode economic stratification, you're a liar, you're a fool, and you've been deluded. By this example, it should be obvious by now. It's impossible. It's never going to happen. 2 points we observed quickly. The first is everybody being rich creates another kind of inflation. Yeah, what we see as luxury today becomes the norm, forcing the companies or the provider of services to create another kind of high-end value reserved for the top 1%. So it's still the same game, still the same loop, only at a much advanced level. That's the first one. The second is hierarchy. As I initially stated, for anything worthy of admiration to function, there must be hierarchy. For a household to function, the father needs to be there. For a company to function effectively, it needs a CEO. For a country to be effective, it needs a president. So there's no escaping it. Hierarchy is the bedrock of society. Surely you didn't open the camera to discourage and tell us it's never going to be possible, it's impossible to become wealthy. Of course not. But the point I want to highlight, and I promised to share the solution later at the end of this video. Well, that end is now. The solution, like the example I gave, investing in the property market only makes it more expensive. One of the things you can do in that situation is understand this philosophy. Always create a win-win scenario. I tell my staffs all the time, always create a win-win scenario. To the degree which the other person won is none of your business as long as you won. Unfortunately, at the infancy of your career, you're most likely going to be at the subservient end of the win ratio. What I mean by this, you would most likely be at lower ratio of the winning equation. The other person might get 70, you 30, sometimes 60-40. But one thing is consistent, which is you're at the lower receiving stages, especially at the beginning of your career. So the best thing to do is not to get greedy, it's not to fight it, bide your time. Investing in one property market means, or investing in one property means you paid your debt of ignorance in the property market. So the next person that will pay that debt benefits you. That's how it works. You can never, and I'll say this, please listen to me very carefully. If there's nothing you've taken from the beginning of this video till now, listen very carefully. You cannot enrich yourself without enriching others. It's impossible. You cannot enrich yourself without enriching others. You invest in the property market. Someone has to do the interior deco. Someone has to do the renovation. In fact, the renovation alone is broken into various value chains, from the carpenter to the painter, the tiler, the plumber. You cannot enrich yourself without enriching others. So disregard this mindset. Once I buy a stock and it goes up, there are people who have previously established plays whom would be enriched in the process. Therefore, it stirs up resentment, unnecessary animosity, and for some people, it leads to inaction. They detest the idea someone else getting rich of them. Once you see your life through this principle, you come to the conclusion it's necessary, because the next person benefits you. The next investment into the property market benefits you. That's how it works. For the sake of time, we'll end it here. And as always, my friends, it's a pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you in the next one.